of the Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sakahu Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees, and all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I've chosen for tonight's verse, a verse which is considered by Lord Sri Krishna as one of the most important verses in the entire Gita. There are 700 verses in it. This one is the most important, and one who, if you will, conquers it means makes it his own, which is another way of saying making Krishna his own, as the verse itself says, we'll go back home, back to Godhead, and very soon, because it gives a tremendous amount of purification. I'll explain that a little more in detail. We all have habits that we sometimes like to get rid of. Sometimes we use certain language we don't like that we use. Or some of us may smoke cigarettes, or we may drink certain kinds of beverages that we know we shouldn't and we don't want to, but we have trouble doing that. Or we go to watch certain movies or certain television shows which don't help our spiritual life. And it's difficult to withdraw from them because there's a strong tendency developed from habit. So what this verse helps do, it helps to draw in like a surge of spiritual energy from Krishna, who is in your heart. Krishna's right here. You don't have to go take a jet plane up and beyond the stratosphere. He's right in the heart, and he's in every atom of creation, and he's in everyone's heart. And because he knows all our thoughts, he knows our wishes, he knows our aspirations, he knows our hang-ups, he knows our troubles, and he is willing and ready and eager to help us overcome these if we but have the humility to simply open ourselves up to the Supreme Lord and have even a minimal of faith. And you will see him do the wonders that he can do for those who are willing to give it a shot, a chance. Because that's how I came here. That's why I'm sitting here. And that's why a lot of these devotees sitting in orange and white outfits, they came also because they came for the first time and they thought it made a lot of sense, the philosophy. And they thought, why not give it a try? See if it works. And slowly but surely, they saw that it did work. And having worked upon them, they shared it with others. So let me begin with this verse. And also the purport. The purport is basically a commentary, and its commentary is written by Srila Prabhupada. And it's his explanation of what this verse means and how it is to be practiced by us. And if we take this seriously, and if we practice it sincerely, we're going to find changes in our life that we could never believe. So let me tell you the number of the verse. It's text number 65 of the 18th chapter, which is the last chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. So I'll read the Sanskrit first. Does anybody have a flashlight on their cell phone that I could use? Well, if you want to do that, it's going to take some time. Oh. Thank you. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. How many of us know this verse, text number 65, which is very important? I see one hand, two hands. Anyone else know it? Okay. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam aivaishyasi satyam te patijane priyosi me. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te patijane priyosi me. And it means, always think of me. Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, his companion, his friend, and the person to whom he has uttered all these different statements, which are answers to his questions on how he can enter this war, which he doesn't want to initially, and why he must enter this war, and how he will win the war. So, the translation, always think of me, Krishna says to Arjuna. Become my devotee. Worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this, because you are my very dear friend. Please repeat, always think of me. Become my devotee. Worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this, because you are my very dear friend. Excuse me, a little warm today. Purport or commentary. The most confidential part of knowledge is that one should become a pure devotee of Krishna and always think of him and act for him. A very important statement. The most confidential part of it, confidential means rather secret. It means that very few people really know this. Generally, people think of themselves, they think of their children, they think of their husbands, their wives, their fathers, their mothers, their uncles, their jobs. But how many people stop for 5 or 10 or 15, 20 minutes a day and say, Krishna, there's no one else to think of than you. You have given me birth, you have given me life, you have created this world. You give us food and clothing and shelter and health and strength and guidance and protection and direction. You give us all these things, and yet I don't think of you. I think of all the things that give me problems and troubles and difficulties. My kid's crying at night, I can't shut him up. Or my mother-in-law wants me to change my color of my shoes. Or things along that line. So, this is a confidential part of knowledge, and it's one that should become, that one should become a pure devotee of Krishna and always think of him and act for him, because he is very dear to us. Right now we're sitting here due to his grace. I mean, after all, he could create an earthquake right now and everything would shake and the ceiling would come down and there would go the class. But everyone has come for a purpose, and Krishna is here to fulfill that purpose. Here meaning in our hearts, not me. So, therefore, Krishna is enabling us. He gives us a car or a bus trip to get over here. He gives us directions. Anyway, he gives us food. There are many people who will not eat today. When I say many, I mean hundreds of thousands. There are many people who don't have a home. Thousands have become homeless due to the increase, especially in the Los Angeles area. So they have to sleep in either the car or they sleep on the street, sleep in a box, wherever. So when Krishna gives you these things, they are graces. They are blessings. He doesn't have to do it, especially if all of us have committed in the course of our life or many lives, we have committed many evils and wrongs and things we should not have done, harmful things to parents, children, so many things we had never even repented for. We may have stole things, we may have hurt people, we may have deliberately tormented somebody, maybe a cat or a dog. All these things happen. So we have to pay a price for all these things. But sometimes, even if we have to pay a price, if a person becomes a devotee, and he promises to change his ways, and he will try his very best, and even if he is not successful immediately, he will keep trying, and with the grace of Krishna, he will ultimately succeed. And there is no one who cannot succeed if he accepts the grace of Krishna and accepts it as something not automatically due him, but rather the opposite, something which is being given as a gift, as something out of kindness and out of compassion that Krishna is giving him so that he can continue on his beginning spiritual life. That's the nature of Krishna. He wants to encourage, he wants to enthuse us, he wants to push us forward. And he doesn't say, well, you did this and you did that, so go and live on the streets. So who's living on the streets? Well, there are people who are told what to do. There are people who are helped. There are people who are given kindnesses, and still they spat in people's faces. Still they harmed. Still they looked down at others. They could not learn the lesson, and therefore Krishna says, all right, enough is enough. So now they must suffer, and through the suffering, they hopefully will realize that being kind, being sweet, being generous, being compassionate, being important to other people's well-being must be considered, must be thought about. So, as I was mentioning just before, that this is the most confidential part of knowledge, and that is that one should become a pure devotee of Krishna. First of all, what is a devotee? We should ask ourselves that question. First of all, a devotee in the language of a Krishna-conscious devotee means a person who has selfless affection and ardent dedication. Selfless affection. It means you give your love unstintingly, unconditionally, whether you get anything back or not. If you give something to a person, you give a gift to a person, you give a this or that, and the person says, thank you very much, and in such a way that he couldn't care less. But a person who is a pure devotee, he doesn't care how you respond. He doesn't care if you respond to him with, who needs this? Or what are you giving me this for? What do you think? I'm on the straights now? Answered is in a very rotten way. So a devotee doesn't care what he gets. He may get anger from someone. He may get hostility. He may get sarcasm. He may get any of these things, but doesn't care because he's doing this as a loving service to Krishna. When you love someone unconditionally, you don't care about the result, except that you try to make the result as best as you can. And if the outcome or the result is not exactly as you wanted, you tried your best. And you don't have to, there's no blame on your part, as long as you've done the very best that you can. So, therefore, we now know what a devotee is. A devotee is one who is devoted to someone, who's dedicated to someone, who believes in someone. It could be an institution like this, or it could be a leader of an institution like Srila Prabhupada. This temple was founded by him, and we continue to glorify him and commemorate his greatness, because he has given so many of us, in the thousands, such benefits through his books, through his songs, and through his poems, and also through his audio lectures, which we just had this morning. So he's given so much that we can never repay. So sometimes a person will say, well, I gave $1,000 donation to the temple. Isn't that good enough? Doesn't that pay for it? And that's the most ridiculous thing to even say. It sounds like something that might come out of a person's mouth who's in a mental hospital. No, it's not, because you can never repay spiritual love. Spiritual love is unrepayable. First of all, it's generated out of much sweat, tears, blood, and whatever else. Yeah, you do it by effort. You do it by by doing what you did not even expect to do. You do it because somebody says, would you please do this for me? We don't have anybody else to fill it. Well, you know, I slept only 4 hours last night. You don't even say that. You say it's needed, and because it's needed, I'll do it. I'll catch up the sleep a little later. So that's the mentality that a person who is a pure devotee has. He's always ready, willing, able, and eager to serve Krishna, God. Now, what does Krishna mean? Who would like to give a definition of Krishna? You could raise your hand. If you get it wrong, I won't throw you out, so don't worry about it. No? Yes, please. Pardon? All attractive, yes. All attractive. So what does that mean? Who would like to say? Now, you already had a chance. Who would like to explain what it means to be all attractive and not partially attractive and not somewhat attractive, but all attractive? What qualities must you have? Yes, loud, please.
Possesses all 6 opulences.
Which are?
Fame, beauty.
Go slow. Everybody he has to hear back there. So, get it. Go ahead.
Beauty,
Yeah.
knowledge, renunciation, strength, and wealth.
Yes. And it's quite natural that when we see a person, or we know a person is extremely wealthy, generally eyes open up wide. You know, if the person who's the owner of Amazon.com, if he walks down the street and somebody says, hey, I forgot his name. You know, anybody know his name? Pardon? Oh, Jeff Bezos, yeah. So a person says that, then everybody comes out of the building and they want to see what this person looks like, because only 10 years ago he was just another proprietor, and now he was pronounced the richest man in the world. And he's very casual about this. His whole mood is laid back. So, so we see that when a person has wealth, people come forward. He's attractive. That's what he said, all attractive. If he's very beautiful, a person, girl or male, very handsome or very beautiful features, walks down the street, everything stops and everyone looks. And that's the way it goes. So beauty, wealth, fame, you said. If a person is very famous, he's a movie star or she's a movie star, starred in a number of different pictures. A person walks down the street. Quite often people don't, especially in this town, there's so many movie stars that many of them pass you by and don't even know it. But if it gets out, you know, on the avenue or on the block that so-and-so is here, then people start to come out and they want to see. They come out with their autograph book. They come out with their headshot pictures. Hey, could you please sign this? What's your next gig? You know, all this kind of thing starts coming out. And so fame is very alluring. It just happens to be that there have been many famous people along the line of history, even in going to the film industry for the last 100 years, there are many people who are famous and who still hold a certain amount of fame, but most do not. I can name certain people who were very prominent when I was a young man, but they are no longer prominent. In fact, their names are not even known amongst many people. Like, for example, there was a very big star, Alan Ladd. How many people know that name? Everybody's going, oh, well, you would. It goes back to my time. Yeah. So, anybody else? No? Okay, so he was extremely prominent. And if you even said his first name, everybody would think that you mean the movie actor. Same thing with many female actresses. Many of them have been very famous. So fame is another thing. People like to be noticed. They like to be looked up to. They like to be shot with, it's gotten so bad that people have this thing called selfie. If there's nobody around to take their picture, they take their own picture. So that was not in my day, although it could have been done. Sometimes people did it with tripods and little piece, nut and bolt. But yeah, that's what goes on now. And but you see, people like history, and they consider themselves the most important. Why the most important? Because it's who I am, and I want to achieve certain things. I want to be known. So fame is a very important thing. I said beauty. I said wealth. I didn't say strength or power. So many people like power, the power to be able to manipulate people, manipulate geography, change things, put up buildings, have political power over particular areas, create laws which cause people to do certain things that they may or may not like to do. It gives you a sense of power in yourself that before this you couldn't do anything, but now thousands of people are obeying a particular law, like you have to cross the street, when the light, you're crossing the street when the light is with you. And if you don't, then you get at least it used to be $25 fine. They probably raised it by now. And I got one. So, so everybody is now jumping to the beat of you better cross at the right time. Don't cross at the wrong time. You don't know which policeman is hiding in his trunk with a little hole in the back of it, just looking to make some money for the day. Because if he doesn't meet his quota, he might not be on the force too long. So again, we'll go back to that: beauty, wealth, strength, fame. Okay, what others? There's another. Knowledge, yes. The knowledge that's being referred to here is material knowledge. And there are some people who have encyclopedic brains, literally. I don't know if you've ever watched this is a kid's thing, but they have a spelling bee. And the kids, they study for it. They study the whole dictionary and encyclopedia. And it's interesting that almost every year, the kids who win it, and they're up to 8, 9, 10 years old, that's about it. The kids who win it are from India, although they may be living in the United States. And they spell words that we have never heard of. We don't even know exists. The point that's being made is many of these children are brought up a little differently than we Americans are. They're given a different culture. They're given a very spiritual culture. They don't associate with the opposite sex the way we did as we grew up. And their minds are very focused and very fixed. And quite often they get big positions in these companies which are, what are these technical companies where they make what do they call those? Software, yeah. They become software creators. And in fact, I have two who live just next door to me. And they're very, very, and their whole manner of speaking is so clean and so nice to listen to. It's not off the street, but it's just words which people are supposed to be speaking. And the slurs that we grow up and that we learn to give, and the sarcasm and all, it's completely devoid. These people don't have that. So anyway, what I'm trying to bring out is when the mind gets very cluttered, very dirty, very filthy with all sorts of trivia, what happens is that it loses its pristine concentration and its pristine early original ability to sponge information. As we know, when we see children, you tell them, I remember my mother used to teach me nursery rhymes, and she'd give me a nursery rhyme. I would just hear it once, and that was it. I could repeat it, as long as it wasn't too long, of course. But yeah, so it'd be 3 or 4 stanzas. I could repeat it without any problem. And so, again, now there's one more attraction that Krishna has that hasn't been mentioned. A little louder. Renunciation. Now, what does that mean? Anybody like to define what is renunciation? Hold up. We all know what renunciation? You know what it means to renounce. To renounce means to give up. Okay? So renunciation is basically the state of or the condition of giving up something. Okay? Now that something can be anything. But generally it refers to a person who has no attachment to material objects or things. And he can take it or leave it. If he loses it, he doesn't care. If somebody steals it, he doesn't care. He just goes and gets another one. He has no emotional involvement with the disappearance of that item. In other words, it means non-attachment. Now, it's natural. It's for the mind to become attached to something. That's its nature. For example, you see something beautiful. Immediately, you want to look at it. You want to turn it this way, turn it that way. You want to know about it because we are attracted to beauty. And essentially, we're all attracted, really, originally, when we were in another world long ago called the spiritual world, Krishna, who is all attractive. Krishna is most beautiful. Although a male has the most gorgeous, the most beautiful features in existence, and can even change those features as he wishes because he's all powerful. Could look like even a female, and he's done that too. And he can look like well, if you all turn your head towards the rear, on the left side, there's Lord Narasimhadev, half male and half lion. So the Lord is incredibly, impossibly amazing. So that is what we call him Krishna, because he is all attractive. So why shouldn't we admire Krishna? If he is the most attractive person, you see these beautiful illustrations of him, but they only just attempt to touch Krishna. But those devotees actually, who are really very advanced in their spiritual life and their meditation, their absorption, when they look at these pictures and they stare and gaze and meditate on them, the actual Krishna sometimes actually manifests to their mind. Of course, this is an advance. This is not somebody who's making some fantasy or creating some imaginary figure. So, therefore, if someone is so beautiful, so wealthy, that he owns everything. There's nothing in this world he doesn't have, and which he doesn't possess, and which he couldn't. And at the end of at a certain time, everything dissolves, disappears, and goes back into Krishna, because it all came out of Krishna. That's how the whole thing is much more detailed than what I'm giving. So, yeah, I want to continue on this purport. One should not become an official meditator. Life should be so molded that one will always have the chance to think of Krishna. You can have a picture of him in your pocket. You can have his initials written on your arm or on your wrist, so that every time you look at your watch, you see his initials, like so. See? So I wrote this K on my wrist a long time ago. It was alone. It was just K, Krishna. So I was writing it with a pen. Finally, I get tired. I figured, why not get it tattooed on? I don't have to do that every day. So I went to the tattoo artist about 4 blocks down. And I said, can you copy this with your pen? He says, yeah. I said, how much will it cost me? He says, we have a minimum of $50. I said, excuse me? $50 for this little K? So he says, yeah, that's our price. You don't go lower? I'm a monk. I don't have any money. So he says, well, I'm sorry about that, but that's what we charge. He says, you're a monk? Where are you a monk from? Where do you monkey? Where do you do your monkey business? So I said, it's down a few blocks away on Watsika Avenue. He says, oh, is that the place where they have the feast and the chanting and the dancing? I said, how do you know about that? He said, well, my brother goes there on the weekend. He says, on Sunday. I said, your brother goes there on Sunday. Well, then you owe me something. You got to give me at least $10 off. Okay, okay, $10 it is, but nothing lower. So he did it for $40, and that was the did. So after a number of years passed by, and Krishna was alone. Now, normally, as you see, Krishna is always with a female, his consort. And it's not very, very nice when Krishna is forced to be alone when actually he likes to be with his friend. So therefore we had a devotee who was living here, and I asked him if he would not mind putting an R next to the letter K. And if he would put an R next to the letter K, and therefore we would have Radha Krishna. He said, no problem. I says, how much? He says, nothing. I said, well, that's a change. He said, no, he lived here, he served here, and he'll probably come back after some time. So he put the RK, and Krishna no longer was alone. He had his girlfriend with him. And therefore he felt very good. It's not a girlfriend in the sense that we know in our material thinking, but it's a girlfriend only in the sense that it is what we call very transcendental, very divine, and they experience a kind of bliss, a type of bliss which exists in the heart. And it gets more and more intense the more pure the love becomes. So I would just give you a hint about what that is. And that is why when persons begin to experience a small degree of that, it's so entrancing that one wants to go more and more and more. No matter how much pain or suffering or difficulties or trials, tribulation one has to go through in order to experience this transcendental bliss. But the real purpose of going through all this is to give Krishna pleasure. Because if God is giving us all the things that I've mentioned, and He's giving us all these different pleasures, then we should at least want to give pleasure back. Although we can never match Him, because He's omnipotent, He's all-powerful, and we're limitedly powerful. So therefore, this is a good enough reason for us every morning we get up and we offer prayers to the Lord. Thank you for another day. Thank you for giving me a place to stay. Thank you for giving me food and clothing and shelter. Medication in case my health is bad. Strength, vitality, vigor. You're giving me all these things, and I'm not paying you anything for them. You're not taxing me for them. You're giving them to me simply because you love me. And because you love me, therefore, you have said to me, I know you've got a lot of wrongs, a lot of bads, and a lot of sins in you, but you're trying your best to become better. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he's engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is acting in his determination to reach me. So that's the way Krishna is. He takes serious all the wrongs we do, but he doesn't take them so seriously when we try to right them in the proper way as defined and described in this particular book. So let me move a little closer. One should always act in such a way that all his daily activities are in connection with Krishna. So I've already said you could put your initials on your wrist. You can have a picture in your pocket of Krishna. I have one right on my monitor. In fact, I have them all over my my apartment. When you come to the door, there's a picture of Krishna right on the door. And when you look to the right on the window, there's a picture of Krishna also, Lord Jagannath. There's no end of them. When you come in, you're just overwhelmed. You're in a different world. You're in the Krishna world. So consequently, you begin to feel the vibration of those beautiful, wonderful pictures which were done out of and in and through devotional service many years ago, most of them. So therefore, every effort should be made. Now, Prabhupada is making a point here. Let me go a little further. He should arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours he cannot but think of Krishna. Why not? And the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna. Abode of Krishna means a different world. It's the original world we were all in at one time. It's called the spiritual world. Or the Christians will call it heaven with a capital H. It's a world of transcendence, a world of bliss, a world of peace, a world of brotherhood, of love. There is no anger and hatred and jealousy and envy and contempt and and all of the kind of feelings that make people feel very uncomfortable. In the spiritual world, everyone treats each other as brother and sister. Why? Because they all feel that they know they are a soul, not the physical body, because in the spiritual world you have only your spiritual body. And that's an eternal body. That's why you become eternal when you leave your material physical body and you go back home, back to Godhead in your spiritual body or soul body. So the soul goes up to the eternal world and it meets its maker, Krishna, and it gets a chance to offer its respects to Krishna, and Krishna gives it a particular Krishna gives it a particular service to do. Because you just don't go to the spiritual world and act like some people they do, on the beach and just lie around and get sunbathing from the rays of Krishna's body. It's not a sunbathing activity. It's that you bathe in the sunshine of Krishna's pure love, pure peace, pure strength, and all of these types of feelings, and you mirror them, you manifest them, you express them. So that's what Srila Prabhupada means when he says he should arrange his life, as I said, and the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in the association of Krishna face to face. In other words, you get to meet God, you can shake his hand. Yeah, God shakes hands. It is mentioned in a few times in the scriptures where the Lord shakes his hands of persons who are his friends, who get an association of Krishna face to face. The most confidential part of knowledge is spoken to Arjuna because he is the dear friend of Krishna, not just a friend, just another friend. Dear means close to the heart of someone, okay? So he is a dear friend of Krishna and has been for millions and millions of years. They've been together, again, separating, coming back together. But Arjuna always has the presence of Krishna. That's mentioned also in the Bhagavatam. And when he has the presence of Krishna, it's 99% the same as when Krishna is right there with him. There's something very special when you're with a person in his person. There's something which radiates from that person. His eyes, his smile, his walk, his talk, all these things. The gopis of Vrindavan, although they had the presence of Krishna in their mind when Krishna left, they still wanted to be with him in person. Because they like to look at him. They like to look at his smile, his beautiful eyes, his joking words, all of these things. That's a special dimension. But it doesn't mean if you're without that dimension that all is lost. Not at all. Because Krishna can fill a devotee with such ecstasy, such bliss, such happiness, such there are different symptoms of this. One may begin perspiring terribly, or the hairs of the arms and the neck go up. It's called hiripilation. The color of one's face may change slightly, may become very blanched, very white. A person may pass out. A person may tremble like this, as if he has Parkinson's disease. These are all ecstatic symptoms that a person gets when he is filled with loving ecstasy. And all he is seeing, all he is feeling, all he is wanting and desiring is the loving association of God. And the more he wants, the more he desires, the more he's thrilling and eagerly wanting to serve that Lord, the more bliss, the more joy, the more happiness and strength. These are innermost. Most people have no idea of inner happiness. As it is mentioned, if I can remember in the Bhagavad Gita. No, I can't remember. It's a very, very wonderful verse in which it says that a person who I can't remember it from the first word unless I know that, but the point of it all is that a person who is experiencing transcendental bliss as a result of this feeling of connection, relationship, oneness with that form of the Lord, feels these different types of inner explosions of happiness. So I'll just finish up this purport now. And the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna. Everyone who follows the path of Arjuna can become a dear friend to Krishna and obtain the same perfection as Arjuna. These words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon who? Krishna. I didn't hear you. Krishna. I heard you that time. Thank you. I like the name Krishna, and when you say it loud, it just makes me feel even better. I'm sorry. The very form with two hands carrying a flute, the bluish boy with a beautiful face and peacock feathers in his hand. There are descriptions of Krishna found in the Brahma Samhita and other literatures. One should fix his mind on this original form of Godhead, Krishna, not something made up. One should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. This does not mean that when we have their appearance days of other forms of the Lord that we should not show our respect. We should always show our respect not only to the Lord and the different forms of the Lord, but even to the demigods. But they should not be given the same degree of focus, of attention, of absorption, and of love of Krishna. Because it's the principle of concentration. When you concentrate the rays of the heart, the rays of love, then what happens? The effect becomes hotter and hotter. Example, we've all taken a glass and we've put it up so the sun could shine through it. When you put it up, it just gets a little warm. But if you take a glass, which I believe is concave, like this, and you shine it to the sun, so the sun's rays don't go this way, they go this way, and they come together at the bottom of the glass, below the glass. So if you put a piece of paper there, then what happens is that because the rays of the sun are coming together, they're coalescing, they create heat in the paper, and the paper begins to burn. How many of us have done this when we were kids? Everybody. This is probably I gave it to all one. When you hit 1A, everybody had to see that. So that's exactly what happens. So when the rays of the mind are focused, I want to read a little more because this is very important. When the rays of the minds are focused, the effect of the concentration improves in terms of how it affects us, physically, mentally, emotionally. So these words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with two hands carrying a flute, the bluish boy with a beautiful face and peacock feathers in his hair. There are descriptions of Krishna found in the Brahma Samhita, scripture, and other literatures. One should fix his mind on this original form of Godhead, Krishna. One should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. The Lord has multi-forms as Vishnu, Narayan, Rama, Varaha, etc. But a devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Arjuna. Okay? If everyone will turn around and look back behind them, you'll see Arjuna and Krishna together. I'm not saying that's an exact portrait of them, but these were inspired artists, and this one in particular, and they did the best they could, and Srila Prabhupada was very pleased with many of these paintings. The Lord has multi-forms as Vishnu, Narayan, Rama, and so forth. Concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge because they're so close, and the closeness gets closer and closer, and the depth of feeling goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And gradually you're enfolded by the bliss, by the love, by the embrace of the Supreme Lord, who appreciates, who is grateful that you are taking so much time when you could be going to a movie or watching a TV show. But instead of doing that, you're doing this. We're taking the time to give our energy and our love and affection to the Lord. And he says, for one who gives his mind to me, I am never lost, and he is never lost to me. So this is the point, is that if we focus on the Lord, he will not be lost to us. He will make sure that we see him, we feel him, and we have his presence. And by doing that, he will make sure that we experience him, and he, of course, is experiencing us because he is in the heart, which is where he dwells next to us, the Supreme Soul. The last sentence of this purport: Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge, and this is disclosed to Arjuna because Arjuna is the most dear friend of Krishna's. So, the main point of this talk is that if we chant the holy name, chant it with a feeling of appreciation, you got the greatest jewel, the greatest gift that can ever be had, because Krishna is non-different than his name. So when you say his name, just as if I take my hand and hit your hand, I feel the warmth of your hand. So when you touch Krishna's name, you touch Krishna. And when you touch Krishna, you touch all his qualities. And when you touch all his qualities, those qualities gradually leach into your own being. And thereby we receive the greatest blessing, the greatest benediction that is possible. And all we have to do is just chant the name, but not indifferently, not apathetically, not in a way which is just as if it were any ordinary name, but we do it understanding that within our mouth and within our throat is the greatest of all gifts, and we express and feel that thankfulness to Krishna for giving us this gift and giving us this opportunity to come back home, back to Godhead. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I see a hand risen. I'm scared of. But can we get the microphone? He's getting it. Thank you. And go slow.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
I'm an old man.
That was very devotionally uplifting. Thank you. I feel better. So my question is this, that you are making the point that in the purport, Prabhupada says how one should not focus on other forms of Krishna, but just on Krishna himself.
Yeah.
And then Prabhupada goes on to say that Krishna, as he was present before Arjuna, and you pointed to that picture. So my question is this: so Prabhupada, it seems like he's gone to the trouble in the purport to direct us to a higher form of worship, worshiping Krishna as opposed to Narayan or Vishnu or some other expansion. Why does he stop at Vasudeva Krishna? And why not Vrindavan Krishna?
Well, you say why you're saying is Vasudeva Krishna, and why not
Vrindavan? Because Krishna in his original form never takes a step outside of Vrindavan.
I mean,
I've heard Prabhupada in lectures say that Krishna on the battlefield. Krishna
what is the
Vasudeva
difference
Krishna.
in his when we take Vasudeva Krishna and Vrindavan Krishna? Okay, they're basically the same, but they're two different moods. You see. And they wear their clothes a little different, and they wear different clothes too. So what is the real difference? If you look at the face of them, is there really that much difference in these faces?
You just said there's a difference in the mood. So
it's a difference in the mood.
He's directing us towards that mood as opposed to what you earlier in the class point is the highest mood, the mood of Krishna with the gopis.
But the mood develops as a result of the way a person grows, in Krishna consciousness. He may feel feelings of affection for Krishna as a baby. He may feel feelings of Krishna. So if a person has grown up over the years and he sees Krishna as a loving little baby, he's not, and that's what he wants to. He's been meditating on that, so he should not be stopped, because this is Krishna. Prabhupada says this to us, but to someone who's already been doing this, there is not any harm, but there's quite a amount of benefit if one has already been worshipping and meditating on Krishna for so many years. So, but if you're starting out new, Prabhupada says, better to start with the original form, the form that Arjuna sees, which I don't. The only difference is the mood in which they're talking, you see. But when you take Arjuna, put him in, make him a young boy, and let Krishna a young boy, there's not going to be much difference. Because Krishna also plays with arrows with his friends, and they do all kinds of bullfighting and things of this sort. They do a lot of those things. I wouldn't make a big thing over that. I would simply say, just focus your attention on that picture of Krishna that is very appealing to you, which you feel very comfortable with, and which you feel you want to give yourself to that form. Because sometimes a form may not be very pleasing for some psychological reasons. So there's so many different pictures of Krishna, you see. That's all I can say about that, though. Any other question? No? No more? All right, you have 3 seconds to lift and go to the prasadam room, and I hope you enjoy your prasadam unlimitedly. And there's a very wonderful sabji. I already talked to the cook. So please, it's the 40-yard dash to the prasadam door. Go ahead. Thank you very much for your kindness coming. Hare Krishna.
I think you solved your own problem with the memory thing just by taking sentence by sentence.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Is that way you're going to have to remember the whole body of what you want to say.
Yeah, because each word was so precious and filled with so much meaning.
And then you just speak over the inspiration you're getting from this.
You don't have to worry what I'm going to say next, because it's right over there. You just have to expand on it. That's all.
I'm not trying to give you a hard time with the question.
No, not you give me a hard time. You know I'll slam you if you. Yeah, I haven't lost the old stuff. Here, please give this to you. Is your wife here? No? Okay, anyway, you wear it and give it to whomever you like. Jai Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Jai. I'm going to serve you.
Because we are different, we all have all the different leaders. We have Krishna, husband, wife, the body. Second generation.
Yeah.
I was in the body after a while. The boy relation was another little boy. Grew up, became really attached to Krishna in front of Ramachandra.
As Ramachandra? As Lord Ramachandra.
Is it according to your Gita, Krishna, the way how you would have been more attached to one form or another, as opposite as Davan or any other?
Okay, well, give me a question now. I need to know a point-blank question.
What is, how do you exactly know? What is your best?
Well, there are a few different ways. One way is if you have an advanced spiritual master who knows these things and can communicate with Krishna, and Krishna tells him exactly what it is, what your rasa was originally in the spiritual world. The other way